Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia, and with me is my compadre Pramod Kumar Buravalli. Hello, Pramod. How are you doing?
Hi, good, Adit.
ये
How are you doing?
मतलब काफी लंबा वक्त हो गया. आपने दर्शन दे दिए. बहुत अच्छा लगा दर्शन करके.
Huh. I
But
I would love to chat if there is anything that I can contribute on. Khaskar if there's any cinema related issues, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna bring up this
नहीं,
north and
वो
south.
ये है ना, मिर्जापुर का एक मीम है पंकज त्रिपाठी का, जिसमें नीचे लिखा है आते ही शुरू कर दिए. तो मतलब दैट
Huh.
इज ट्रू कि आते ही शुरू कर दी सिनेमा की बातें एंड ऑल दैट. सिनेमा अंत में करेंगे, क्योंकि देखो सब में क्या होता है, मिठाई सबसे एंड में आती है. तो द डिस्कशन दैट इज द मोस्ट entertaining and animated, and will be like a dessert for all our podcast
Yeah.
listeners. Will finish in the end. But it's been a crazy couple of weeks, guys. Like, we've been running around. So we did a midweek podcast sort of a week and a half ago, but last weekend we were unable to do one. We've just been running around. I've kept a little unwell as well. But what a wild week it's been, right? With the whole Ukraine situation still being very volatile. Emmanuel Macron winning the elections in France again. The first prime minister, sorry, it's not prime minister, the first leader after 2002 to repeat his performance. And I mean, he was against Marie Le Pen last time. It was a very close. I mean, last time से ज़्यादा इस बार close लग रहा था, but ultimately he won with more than 58% of the vote. In France they have the runoff thing for the presidential elections, so it's a fascinating thing. Now we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's very important trip that's coming up. To the European nations. I think he has already embarked on them, and what it means. I think he's likely to go to Germany for sure, and I think he's likely to meet Mr. Macron as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Um,
This is important because
yeah.
both the European Union and America as such
Hmm.
to put together
Hmm.
at this point in time are about $60 trillion in total
Hmm.
GDP.
Hmm.
And if you look at all other countries put together, that is
Hmm.
two-thirds of the world economy, actually more than two-thirds of the world economy.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
crucial that India continues to have this Atmanirbhar foreign policy. This is a wonderfully new sort of way in which
It's a very Indic term also,
very,
Atmanirbharta in foreign
very,
policy.
very neutral. It is not non-aligned per se. It is multi-alignment. This is a
Hmm.
weird way of putting it. But
Hmm.
Sushma Swaraj, and now for a long time you've had a very knowledgeable. After a long time, you've had a very knowledgeable foreign minister in S. Jaishankar. And the way he is diplomatically giving back to
Hmm.
the world community in the rich way they deserve it is unbelievable. The way he's
Yeah.
planned, the way he's very soft and yet very soft spoken. He's not. He doesn't exhibit any emotions. It's very important to have somebody like that. Where you when you're talking about polar world and multi-alignment, you're saying essentially that we have our own set of problems. We are a very large economy that is looking to double its output in the next few years. So please do not distract us with all this running commentary on global issues. And if you want us to comment, we'll always come back and wave the white flag at both the warring parties. है ना? दोनों
Hmm.
को दो झंडे दे दो, कह दो कि शांति 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 कर दो.
No,
मुझे
no,
शांति
I
दो.
thought I thought you were going one step further. That the Gujarati Narendra Modi will also make sure that the flags that you give them for Shanti are made in India.
And you have to buy the flags. You're not getting it
Huh,
for free.
exactly. You have to buy the flags. That
And you know, what Narendra Modi has done. This is the best part of the Gujarati in him, and with all due respect to all my Gujarati friends, is there is a moral story kind of what my I think grandmother used to tell me that दो warring parties होते हैं, right? दो warring parties are two बिल्लियां जो लड़ते रहती हैं, and they get a piece of roti and they want to divide it into two, और किसी बंदर को बुलाते हैं, right? They bring in this monkey to divide it into two. The बंदर eventually basically halves it करके पूरा बंदर ही खा जाता है, right? And the दोनों बिल्लियां basically do not get any peace at all. But here, this is the wise monkey. If the wise monkey is really invited, not only will peace be ushered in, but it will be made. I mean, of course, this is what India has traditionally also done. It's nothing that anybody has propounded new. The larger sense of purpose and larger sense of being, especially 2 साल कोविड लड़के सभी लोग मर के बाहर निकले हैं, and here you are, the Western nations have no sort of regard to global peace. They just don't care for what everybody else thinks. All they want is to get their oil economy and oil and gas economy up and running. So they decided to destroy Russia and Russia's economy. Right? This is what it is. So
no, I mean, no, and now the problem is it's become so complicated. No, it's become so convoluted. The whole debate.
It's convoluted, not just complicated. It's convoluted because he could have had peaceful coexistence. Everybody could have gotten a piece of this energy pie instead of rushing into a supply chain that never existed. Nobody is going to buy gas from the United States. It's so far away from most of the global economies. No, who's going to buy it from United States, Aadit? रशिया है, कटार है, कौन से कंट्रीज है पास में, why will they buy it? So anyway, long story short, what Modi has sensibly done and proved to the world is now the world is coming, like what Jaishankar was saying at the Raisina dialogue is, look, we said you don't fight, if you ask us our opinion, don't fight, but here you are, you want our opinion, you come here, you listen to us patiently. We say that, look, let's all make sure that peace is ushered in and the global economy is back on track. At the same time, if you want us to supply wheat, here are the things that are stopping us from being well integrated into the global economy. In fact, India at the end of the day has made wheat the most productive and most attractive export option for Indian farmers. In spite of repealing the farm laws. Can you believe it? Has the farm laws
and we want to explore this a little bit further, but I want to take you to Europe because that's where the significant visit is. So we'll start with talking about Mr. Macron and why his victory is so significant, and then we'll talk about Mr. Modi's victory, tour to Germany, France, and then he's meeting people. So Emmanuel Macron was on the back foot, right, in the polls. In the first stage, he was not able to get the minimum 50%. So it went into a runoff between the top two. It was between him and Marine Le Pen. Now, Le Pen is seen as pandering to the extreme across various sections of the society, not just in France, around the world. And Macron was seen as a center to center right, centrist essentially leader. Right now, last time when Macron was coming, all the left in India, especially, मतलब सिर्फ हाथ लेके जाके पहनाना ही बाकी था. They were all jumping up and down and stuff. But then Macron's liberalism was proper liberalism and not the fraud liberalism that these guys, the left in India, pretends to stand for, right? So that liberalism got in the way of their ideology. And they're like, so this time they just didn't know who to cheer for, Macron or usse bhi zyada radical, right? So now they were doing quiet tali.
हाँ, इसीलिए वो चीर जब करते हैं उनका चीर हरण होता है. The Indian left has no sanctity left. They always hanker on free speech. They always hanker on these liberal values. And when it comes to such examples, now Macron is the one who is leading the charge for the European Union and NATO right now. Warmongering. What do you call that? So, Indian left, nobody cares about it. They're just instruments in the global.
No, but Macron and Macron has also bullishly stepped up for India when a lot of other Western powers have refused to.
Well, that is also, there is an economic reason for that. The resurgent European Union will be led by Germany because Germany is the industrial power.
I agree.
And the UK doesn't want to have any truck with Germany. It's a weird sort of three-way fight between these three powers.
No. So I agree. So we have unko ladne do. Our allegiance should be with the government of France, right? And Macron who has been a good friend to India. The problem with the Indian left is they want him to do their bidding, even though they have no say in what he does.
Oh, he has been the silent supporter for Modi across the board, even from the time when India was still trying to get nuclear energy from Canada, because France holds a lot of influence in Canada and Australia, also Australia, which are the main suppliers of uranium for our
Yes.
nuclear power reactors, if you remember.
Yeah.
But coming back to our main strategic goals of Atmanirbhar, at least in defense, we are 50 to 55% dependent on Russia, 15 to 20% dependent on France, and the remaining on Israel for our strategic system. These are not regular day-to-day infantry weapons or artillery. There's a lot of progress that has been made by our private sector on it. But when you come to the Navy, when you come to the Air Force, there's still a lot of dependence on France for a lot of strategic weapon systems. And what I'm told, with this visit of Modi, there will be much more on offer by the French government, which is still miffed. If you remember, it was supposed to be France which was going to deliver those conventional submarines to Australia, and the US
Yeah.
got in between, bumped it off, and now it
Yep.
is sore. It is so sore at the so-called Western Alliance that they will end up selling more technology than India had ever asked for, which is good, with technology transfer at a cheaper rate, at a produced capacity, that they will enable our manufacturing to also. Because remember, our technology, I've always said this, Adit, the only difference between India and the US are threefold. One, dominance in engines. अगर हम engines, aircraft engines खासकर से, if we are able to manufacture all sorts of aircraft engines, then you don't need airframes for बाकी सब चीजें we have mastered it. Number one. Number two is critical infrastructure as far as internet is concerned. You are still depending on American internet. You don't have your own Bharat net up and running yet. Okay. The third is this e-commerce. If you remember, just 2 days ago, Nandan Nilekani was asked to head a very strategic committee to try to get this stranglehold that Flipkart, which is now owned by Amazon, for Walmart and Amazon, this stranglehold that the online companies have almost 80% market share, which is not good. You're 80% of retail. Okay, remember, one of the main things that BJP had campaigned against, and you and I were part of that initial white paper too, was FDI in retail. Do you remember that? 2013, exactly 10 years ago. Now look
Yeah,
at the
absolutely.
situation. 80% is controlled by Amazon and Flipkart, which is essentially Walmart. Now the Indian government has realized it and is scrambling to try to empower your local Kirana stores. क्या कर रहे हैं? They formed a committee and they have said that we will have our own e-commerce gateway, our government-owned sort of a non-profit. I don't know how you define that. How is the government going to own a non-profit? Anyway, long story short, it's going to be like a non-profit that will be a marketplace for these small Kirana stores to coexist and compete, because you cannot compete against the US dollar. You should have never allowed Amazon to come into India. You should have never allowed Flipkart to come in, and Walmart to come in the back door by acquiring Flipkart.
No, no, my change on this, my thing on this is different. My thing is, I think we should allow any foreign countries to come into India and stuff, if companies, if they want to. My solution to that is, actually you have to standardize the system of borrowing and lending. If you want to create a competition to Amazon and anyone, marketplace or anyone to come, you have to incentivize Indian banks or Indian to lend money at reasonable rates. If
Correct.
someone is taking money from here at a 1 or 2% interest rate and investing that money in India, right, and making 10% of it, then they are making 8% profit. सामने अगर आपकी इंडियन कंपनी वो पैसा मार्केट से उठाती है 10% इंटरेस्ट, तो आप प्रॉफिट कैसे बनाने वाले हो?
And वो भी
So it is,
and also limited quantity. यहाँ पे print करते जाते हैं ना. There's an unlimited supply of liquidity here.
yeah. So the only fundamental difference of in my thing is, I think there should be no restrictions, free market rakho, but also to freedom in capitalization and ease of getting, funding, line of credits for Indian companies, जो अभी नहीं हो रहा है at the scale at which it should happen if you want to take on the global markets.
One of the good things that is going to happen, coming back to your main topic, which is this visit of Narendra Modi to the European Union, is, remember, a struggling economy and a struggling market which is being dependent on two very adversarial superpowers, Russia, on whom they have to continue. They have no other choice but to continue taking gas from Russia. They have no other alternatives. The US cannot supply them. Maybe some from Qatar, but Qatar is still much more long distance away from the European Union, right? Second is this dependency that they have on low cost manufactured goods from China. Still, because of that railway line, they remember China has a direct railway line from Beijing all the way to UK. You can
Wow.
ship route. You don't have to take the sea route. You don't have to take the aerial route. There's a train route. Okay. Now, how does India overcome the supply chain and continue to be a rising manufacturing hub? Is what these deals are going to be about. Adit, this man Atmanirbhar will become so prevalent
Yeah.
that in the next few years, every single market where China has been supplying goods to, India will be provided the opportunity to create a competition.
Yeah,
Right?
the official reason could be कि हम लोग अपनी position यूक्रेन पे बताने जा रहे हैं, but we all know that that is just one part of it. I think the economic, especially because after the EU chief, visit to India, and you're meeting, and certainly positive news coming from across. I think it's a very important visit, and I think maybe in a week or so we'll know the real perspective कि क्या हो रहा है.
We will definitely feel very sort of good that India chose not to take sides in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because
Yeah.
there is a very big possibility right now that Russia will stop supplying. There's only two countries that they've stopped supplying natural gas to, not to the bigger countries, not to Scandinavian countries, not to Germany, which is the biggest consumer.
Yeah.
But you wait and watch. It's going to be very interesting.
तो अब देखते हैं क्या होता है. So moving on. अच्छा, before we jump into the other topics, एक one question I want to tell you. हमने तो ये बात ही नहीं की मेरी podcast पे. पाकिस्तान के वजीर आजम बदल गए. कप्तान साहब चले गए. कप्तान साहब को रेजिग्नेशन देना पड़ा, और सलामी बल्लेबाज जो कंट्री के बाहर से खेल रहे थे उनके छोटे भाई आ गए, शहबाज शरीफ. And one of the first things, I think Nawaz Sharif is going to be back, and the interesting, insane concept of BJP and Congress type alliance. As unfathomable as it may sound in India. Similarly, I'm not comparing one is BJP, one is Congress. दोनों बहुत अलग है. I'm just saying that two opposite sides of the political spectrum. The Nawaz Sharif's
No,
PML,
it's not a bad comparison, because in many ways Imran Khan was an outsider, and so is Narendra Modi to the so-called political system, right? And everybody trying to
there is a certain difference ना. No, ये एक difference है. भी मोदी CM बन चुका है. इमरान खान तो मतलब कुछ था ही नहीं, वो कप्तान था.
हाँ, मतलब outsider का tag, even for a long time, even though he was the chief minister, he didn't fit in the BJP Latian's Delhi formula. He never was comfortable in that. So that way, BJP's luck was that there's somebody like Narendra Modi who was detached to all of this. But coming back to Pakistan, obviously everybody knows that the ISI wanted Imran Khan out. They were unable to rein him in. He was insinuating that there's a sort of a conspiracy by the United States to dethrone him, of all people. He was the softest of them all. Why would they want to dethrone him, right? There's no incentive for. I mean, as it is, Pakistan is teetering and is on the brink of bankruptcy. Again, Shahbaz Sharif, the reason why he and Erdogan and all of these guys are making a beeline to Saudi Arabia is for money. They just want cash to bail them out. Turkish economy is really struggling.
Yeah.
Pakistan has no economy left. It's basically, it has to degrade itself. It should be called probably a wasteland or something, right? Like Swaziland. I mean,
before we go into Pramod's rhetorical poetic flourish, I'll bring him back. To reality. वरना मुझे लगता है कि प्रमोद के अंदर वो खाला जाग गया, ये बिक गई है, गवर्नमेंट करके शुरू हो जाएगा अभी.
I'm kind of it's quixotic of Pakistan to assume that by just changing the face, their problems will go away. it will not go away. They will naturally want to blame India again and over again for all of their problems, both economic, political, and everything. And their only unifying factor is to, instigate some or the other trouble in Kashmir and try to unify their warring communities. It's not going to happen. It's a very sort of a contradictory nation. But at the same time, where Saudi Arabia is, what Salman is going to do, because he is liberalizing his economy quite a bit. All the infrastructure that is being built, all the sort of resorts that he's building, is essentially he's trying to emulate, UAE, right? The kind of 20 years of reform that UAE has initiated, and a much bigger scale, because UAE's capability to raise funds is unbelievable. They've already invested billions and billions of dollars across the world, right? So for them to scale up to such a level is a possibility, because this is all a play for the post oil and gas economy. Everybody knows that in the next 10-15 years, with the improvement in solar technology, with the improvement in renewable technology, and most importantly, the experiments that are happening in fusion, 15 to 20 years is all these Middle Eastern countries have, as far as
Yeah.
their oil and gas reserves is concerned. So unless they desperately diversify into something, I don't know, dates or dating, I don't know which you can pick.
Again ये लंबा गया, but like as that very cliched Hindi line goes, आगे आगे देखिए होता है क्या. There has been a very interesting alliance between UAE, Israel, India, and Saudi Arabia. And I'm not saying it's an open alliance between them, but you just think of where they are. You have India, Israel on one side, UAE, Saudi Arabia, but there is a strategic understanding of how there are very shared interests, and how who the real adversary, foe, or what power poses a real challenge. And I think there is an acknowledgement, and that's why there is a realignment.
Very well put. At the same time, there is a very deep realization within the Islamic world at the very top. The top decision making still lies only in Saudi Arabia for the Islamic world, right? There's no other. Iran is a kind of a far contender. Turkey tries all the time, but they come away and come away with a begging bowl. Nobody else cares about Pakistan. Who else is left, right? So only UAE, which has made considerable progress in the Islamic world as far as their own investments in technology is concerned. I was always amazed. Adit, मैं 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, almost 5 years, I used to attend conferences in Dubai on blockchain, and I was very impressed. It's not just copying and pasting something that they don't need, right? It's not like कि हमारे पास पैसा है, हम पैसा ऐसे spread कर देंगे and we'll buy the technology. It was a genuine interest to learn technology, and they last year, even during the peak of COVID, ended up sending their rocket to the moon. The same
Yeah,
civilization
absolutely.
that believes in that the moon was split by Prophet Muhammad still ends up doing something that is essentially try to explore the face of the moon, right?
No, but I think
So
civilizationally they are also making a very interesting decision. They cannot just move suddenly from the past, right, of what they believed in. But what they are trying is have certain guards in place, where even if some emperor comes and pushes them back where they want to, they can't where they were.
I beg to differ. Well, I kind of agree, but I also have a point of kind of a pivot. Pivot ये है
Hmm.
कि lot of things are resting on Prince Salman. He's going to be the king of
Hmm.
Saudi Arabia very soon, maybe another few
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
And the way his decision making is reflecting right now, the opening up of ties with Israel, and
Hmm.
using its small little client states to
Hmm.
basically open up all sorts of relationships with every country they were adversarial about, is an indicator
Hmm.
that they have realized that after 9/11, the investments they had made for almost 78 years, the Wahhabi
Hmm.
terrorist groups that they had directly or indirectly funded, we don't know that, has become a waste. They've
Hmm.
realized that very well, and they have no way but to invest in technology. They want to get ahead of the Western world, and that means They are still 500 years away, but they have at least made a
Hmm.
realization, right? India has
Hmm.
realized that if you have to beat the West and compete with the West, you have to have everything that is there in the world in your own image. China
Hmm.
has done that under Deng Xiaoping. Look at where China is. It's a $15 trillion economy, for God's sake. Now, nobody can do
Hmm.
anything in spite of all of this with COVID, Adit. Dekho. So they, under Prince Salman, this is a different Islamic world, a reformed Islamic world, so to speak, with again UAE backing them up. But it will take a lot of time. It's 1.8 billion people. Most of them live in the past that they cannot back up. Uh, they are in the number fourth position. If you look at four civilizations that exist after the West, the Chinese, the Indic, it's the fourth is
नहीं, वो तो,
Islam.
but again, that's what I'm saying. No, there is, I think there is a debate that needs to be had uh, on on a lot of levels. But the thing is, the strategic has overtaken the civilizational, and I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is that is the way forward.
The practical has overtaken the strategic has
Yeah.
overtaken the civilization. Absolutely well put. I feel that in this reformed world, India has a very big chance to overtake the Chinese. They've already taken the Islamic world as far as technology is concerned. There's no comparison. Now, Chinese have excelled in the art of reverse engineering. India has excelled in the art of learning in a very slow and steady fashion. They've some of these technologies took time, 60, 70 years
Hmm.
for us to master. But whatever we are doing, whatever we are innovating, whatever new that we are coming up with is world class. अब मैं क्या
Hmm.
बताऊं?
Absolutely.
The leapfrogs we have made in certain areas, we some of them we can talk about it, especially in road laying technologies, in the speed with which we are building infrastructure, roads, bridges are unbelievable. Look at the pace. Look at the pace at which Nitin Gadkari is
Absolutely.
building highways, Adit. बताओ क्या, I mean, कौन build कर सकता है इतने बड़े देश में? You know, so I'm very optimistic, but at the same time, I hope and pray that India, at this point in time, focuses in the next 2 years on education policy as well. We'll come to that later, I know, because that's
Hmm.
one area that NEP was a very good policy document, but then suddenly 2 years of COVID interrupted everybody's sort of trot, and
Hmm.
we'll see. We'll see, because systemically
No,
we want to
absolutely.
have that
No,
culture of
no, no,
innovation.
no. That is again a further debate,
Yeah.
that we have to do. Uh, but as we go to the finale of the podcast, the last 15 minutes, we want to talk a little bit about cinema, because there has been a discussion about cinema, about Hindi cinema, regional cinema. The Chiranjeevi said something, Sudeep said something, Ajay Devgan said something. There was a whole debate about Chiranjeevi said about whether southern cinema of the south getting the recognition is possible there or not. So I wanted some perspective of what Pramod is thinking, and then I'll also give my perspective. And yeah, I love the fact that we have entered into this OTT world where I can watch the best of Malayalam cinema, Telugu cinema, Tamil, Bengali cinema. I saw the other day, I saw an Iranian film. I mean, not just global film, but primarily the Indic cinema that I'm getting to consume is just unbelievable. And this is apart from Hindi, Gujarati, and Marathi and all. But yeah, Pramod, go for it.
My perspective is that there has been a slight neglect of non-Hindi films by who? By the Hindi films. This is kind of an oxymoron, क्योंकि अरे वो खुद की फिल्म से देखेंगे ना, समझ में नहीं आता है तो क्यों दूसरी फिल्म्स को देखेंगे? This is where I always protest, and मेरा कंप्लेन रहता है बाकी तेलुगु और तमिल सिनेमा लोगों से कि अरे तुम्हारी भाषा वो उन्होंने सीखा. अगर you had made an effort as a culture, have Telugu people made an effort to go and open Telugu schools in Hindi speaking areas? नहीं किया.
Mhm.
पूरा पैसा चाहिए. हर एक हिंदी फिल्म इंडस्ट्री के मेन बाद तेलुगु फिल्म इंडस्ट्री का नाम आना चाहिए. बट अरे तुम्हारा अपना भाषा तुम नहीं सिखाओगे, हाउ विल दे अंडरस्टैंड इट? नॉट एवरीथिंग कैन बी अंडरस्टूड बाय सबटाइटल्स ना. So you've not made an investment to make the product market. The product is not cinema. The product is your own language. Now there is some sort of of a hawa going on after Bahubali, Pushpa, RRR. Telugu film was always way ahead of its times. But Telugu people have been cocooned. They themselves don't learn their language, Adit. मैं क्या बताऊं अब बाकी हिंदी और गुजराती लोगों से और तमिल लोगों से इट इज नॉट इवन तेलुगु एनीमोर इट्स इंग्लिश तेलुगु एंड इंग्लिश टुगेदर अब खुद की भाषा नहीं बोलेंगे खुद की भाषा के बारे में ये प्रचार नहीं करेंगे
बट वो सिर्फ तेलुगु सिनेमा का नहीं है इश्यू इन गुजराती सिनेमा you know there is the funniest thing कभी-कभी I'll be watching something and the villain will suddenly start talking in Hindi and I'm like hey मतलब every character is a Gujarati it's set in an urban Gujarati milieu right why is the villain the only one talking in English right so because there is this urge कि हमको संजय दत्त का जो वास्तव वाला भाई का लैंग्वेज है ना वो रिपीट करना है तो they're talking बम्बैया हिंदी
no I think these regional film industries are lucky that Hindi film industry is not fanatical or Hindi people are not fanatical to be very honest with you they are not fanatic about their language Adit सच में I always fight tooth and nail with the Tamil people when they say कि तमिल लोगों पे के ऊपर हिंदी imposition हुआ है हिंदी people are always trying to dominate अरे कहाँ dominate किया भाई हम बीच में तेलुगु लोग को dominate किए बिना तुमको जाके dominate करेंगे क्या the so-called inferiority complex that Tamil people have of everything they assume that Hindi film industry is dominating them Hindi is dominating them is first of all wrong. Second of all, the marketing part has only started with Bahubali. उससे पहले मैं बताऊं, almost for 70 years I can count film to film. There have been very well made non-Hindi films that have gotten Oscar awards. Oscar, इतने अच्छे फिल्म मलयालम में, बंगाली में, तेलुगु में, Oscar.
You mean nominated to the Oscar? No, you mean nominated to the Oscar.
Nominated to the Oscar. That's what I meant. Nominated to the Oscar. इतने अच्छे मूवी बने हैं. But for some reason, they themselves were feeling happy or contented, so to speak, कि हाँ, अरे तेलुगु फिल्म है, अच्छा, it's great कि वो कन्नड़ एरियाज में भी, बेंगलोर में भी हिट हो रहा है, उससे ज्यादा कभी सोचा नहीं. There's a film called Maya Bazaar. I keep telling every Hindi person who knows Hindi to watch it. Now I think they have either dubbed it या subtitles डाला हुआ है. It's such a classic based on Mahabharata. It's not Mahabharata at all. Characters गिन चुन के वहां से घटोत्कच निकाला, भीम को निकाला, इसको निकाला, अभिमन्यु को निकाला. But पूरा कहानी is made up, Adit. That was made 75 years ago. It's the classic legendary. उसका ये था cinematographer एक गोरा था, Marcus Bartlett. Even today, every Telugu you ask him, have you seen Maya Bazaar? वो कहेगा हाँ. So when you made such world beating products, you've still not been able to market to the larger public and say कि हाँ हम तेलुगु सिखाएंगे या नीचे हिंदी में subtitles डालेंगे. कुछ नहीं किया, बस बैठे रहे, पैसे कमाया. So I find them to be at fault for making good products with a terrible marketing team. Now this guy Rajamouli has excelled in marketing somehow. He has found that right.
I think Rajamouli has hit that indic space also. Understood that indic space and the power of it, right? But when I actually heard Chiranjeevi and what you said is, it's not even in the people, those DMK leaning politicians who claim to speak for Tamil people. They don't even speak for all of them, right? They've just hold their own view and they try to extrapolate it. But what Chiranjeevi said today does make sense. Ki Hindi cinema was a little ignorant of the superstars. But I'm saying he just mentioned the South Indian films. I'm saying not just the South Indian films. It was ignorant of. I'm not justifying Hindi cinema. I'm saying it was ignorant of Marathi cinema, Gujarati cinema, Bengali cinema, right? As well, and I think they also suffered. In fact, I would say Bengali cinema probably gave India one of its most celebrated filmmakers, Satyajit Ray.
I saw all Satyajit Ray's movies when he got this Oscar. If you remember, he got the Oscar for which one was that? I forget the name of the movie.
उनको lifetime achievement मिला था Oscars में.
And he was on his deathbed when he was receiving the award. I'll tell you, the problem was also politics. Remember, Hindi heartland was completely dominated by the Congress. But some regional parties headed by film stars were taking root in certain South Indian areas. जैसे कि तेलुगु में 1983 में तेलुगु देशम पार्टी आ गया था. It was the principal opposition party to the Congress. अब when Chiranjeev was talking about, that was a event in 1988. They deliberately did not put N.T. Ramarao because he was the principal opposition leader there. There's a lot of politics also involved. ऐसे ऐसे भी नहीं था कि कोई ये इतने भी भोले लोग थे, right? ये तेलुगु फिल्म इंडस्ट्री का कुछ भोला इंडस्ट्री नहीं है as it is being projected. They also played their politics. It was also a victim of their own sort of conniving way of trying to side suddenly with the DMK. अरे पहले से बोल दिया होता कि there is no divide between north and south. कभी बोला नहीं. So
but you do believe, like, the DMK's discussion on this Hindi imposition is actually motivated कि इतना हो नहीं रहा है, right? Because I want to ask you for your perspective rather than
it is just completely political. They have built their legacy, this so-called Periyar's legacy of hating Hindi for no reason. Half of Tamil is filled with Sanskrit. If they only speak good Tamil, they will know that half of it is Sanskritized Tamil. Sangam literature is filled with that confluence that has happened between Tamil and Sanskrit. Only idiots, Dumils, they are called Dumils. These Dumils are anti-national people who are hell-bent on removing that Indic signature, the Hindu, Baudh, Jaina signature from Tamil for their own devious purposes. Otherwise, there is no question that Tamil literature is such a most beautiful literature, which is very Indic in nature, and they've made such spectacular movies, the Tamil film industry. And definitely they deserve to be seen across India. But unless this politics, especially this DMK brand politics, is rooted out from the country, they have no sort of salvation. It's very sad.
Absolutely.
They have such good products. They're very good products.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and this is so silly. But one thing is for sure, right? Ki, OTT has made sure that we have access to all these brilliant movies. I watch so many Telugu movies, Tamil movies, Malayalam movies right now. I have watched a few Kannada movies as well. KGF Chapter 2 is happening. It's a Kannada movie that's being a big hit. And these are commercial movies. मैं तो commercial तो कम ही देखता हूँ. I actually ask Pramod for recommendations. मैं non-commercial जो मुझे, and I prefer to watch them with subtitles. अभी मैंने कुछ time पहले विक्रम वेदा देखी थी, जो R Madhavan की movie थी, right? Now it's being remade into Hindi, right? So now Vikram, there are such fascinating. Vijay की एक movie थी, right? Which was a big.
There are very good movies being made. There are very good movies being made, not just because of OTT, but because they have realized that instead of trying to make an international product, which they tried and failed, so-called international product, कहीं को international film festival में जाने की ये कोशिश बहुत try करी सब लोगों ने, and सबको लगा कि अब हाथ धो बैठ इसको, they would lose money more than anything. Then suddenly, abruptly, with this past 10 years with Bahubali, they realized कि अरे गोद में लेके बच्चा हम सब हर एक जगह घूम रहे हैं. यहाँ पे हिंदी फिल्म इंडस्ट्री है, 60 करोड़ लोग हिंदी समझते हैं, उसको हिंदी में डब करो या उसको रीमेक कर दो हिंदी में. अरे दिस इज व्हाट जितेंद्र यूज्ड टू डू. ऑल जितेंद्र फिल्म्स वर साउथ इंडियन फिल्म्स ओनली ना, right?
Essentially, a lot of them in 80s. Yeah. Absolutely.
Also made in South films. Aadit, ऐसा मैं गाने
अरे भाई मैं चिरंजीवी को बोली, they were saying about this Hindi cinema. I was like, why doesn't he say that he actually remade Munna Bhai MBBS and Lage Raho Munna Bhai into Shankar Dada MBBS in Telugu, right? And where as the negative actor Sanjay Dutt के सामने there was the Parsi Gujarati actor Baman Irani. So Telugu में they chose the great Telugu actor Paresh Rawal, right? अभी Paresh Rawal को क्या Telugu आती है? He's a Gujarati actor.
Paresh Rawal was a very big villain in Telugu film industry.
I know, but I want to take this further. No, Pramod, I want to take this further, right?
Villain भी नहीं, comedy villain ना, कितना लोगों को पसंद था Paresh Rawal.
Who was opposite Chiranjeevi? I think it was Sonali Bendre, wasn't it?
In that film, was it Sonali Bendre, or I don't recall right now. That film,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
My point is कि
oh,
Sonali
Munna Bhai
Bendre.
wala na? Yeah, it was Sonali Bendre, correct. Yeah, it
हाँ,
was Sonali Bendre. Yeah.
या सोनाली बेंद्रे, यस, मुझे याद नहीं. सो आई थिंक वसूल राजा वाज कमल हसन एंड शंकर दादा वाज चिरंजीव.
Sonali
So I'm saying
Bendre,
शंकर
Sonali
दादा.
Bendre.
हाँ. So if सोनाली बेंद्रे was a, सोनाली बेंद्रे is a Marathi actress, right? She is doing
No,
Telugu
no,
film.
there is
So ये
lot of
हो ही रहा था.
syncretic, happy coexistence between all of these film industries, except for Tamil film industry because of Karunanidhi, and to a large extent the sort of films that were made after the 1980s, because politics took over, right? DMK became a strong political establishment, and naturally Congress was the only one that they would fight against. That mellowed quite a bit because DMK was in a very smart way trying to align both with the Congress and the BJP, so they didn't really take that to heart. But now it is coming out with all fangs. I hope it doesn't affect the creativity of the Tamil people.
Yeah.
A great culture, great civilization. Hope they produce classics. See, the Tamil film industry, being a Telugu, I will tell you, is capable of making better films than the South Korean film industry. इतना classic content है उनके पास.
Oh, it is unbelievable.
Superb
And
actors.
they, and imagine the insane amount of strength that not only did the Tamil film industry give us SP Balasubramaniam and all that, it gave us Ilayaraja and AR Rahman back to back.
Correct.
Can you believe that? Like, and
Unbelievable.
I mean, yes, and I'm not even talking about the others, Yuvan Shankar Rajan, all those people, right? I mean, KJ Yesudas sung all those 70 songs for Ravindra Jain and Amol Palekar, and all of them.
There's
So he was singing in Hindi and he was winning awards.
there is a very big revival of sorts. There is a love right now uh, that the southern film industry is unable to fathom where this kind of market was all along, right? Because of various reasons, they basically didn't want to go into the Hindi film industry. Maybe because of the prevalence of the Khans. We don't know all of this. You brought up an interesting point कि Indic sort of content भी ज्यादा होता है, खासकर तेलुगु और कन्नड़ में. It is true because of N.T. Ramarao, because of Rajkumar, because of great heroes and heroines like Savitri, who graced the stage and made spectacular contributions to Indian cinema industry. I'm very optimistic. I'm seeing very good films come out, Adit. Just this past weekend or उससे पहले वाला weekend, my wife Sri Lakshmi and I watched two back-to-back good Telugu films. One was called Akhanda, which is about a story of a tantric who comes back to try to save some people. Then the other one is a very light-hearted rom-com of this girl and boy who were sort of in an on and off relationship in college. Then they meet after several years, and how they, of course, sort of rekindle their relationship. Very nice, smooth, healthy. बच्चे भी देख सकते हैं. It's not like all this kind of Hollywood type of smoochy type of rom-com. It's a very healthy rom-com without any vulgarities or whatsoever. So I feel very optimistic. Made by a women director, by the way, lady director.
Yeah.
Very well.
No, it's brilliant. I think.
And coming back, one point on Kicha Sudeep and Ajay Devgan, I think they really quickly sorted it out. क्योंकि वो थोड़ा misunderstanding sort of lost in translation.
एक बात बोलूं मैं. I love watching Sudeep and Ajay Devgan both, and I also never pay attention to controversies if they are done within a week of an actor's movie releasing, because they sort themselves out, and the only idiots are the ones still discussing it after 2 weeks after, and we don't want to be those. but
yeah.
No, but and I'll give you, I'll give you the most beautiful thing about cinema, right? There is a movie called English Winglish, which everyone loves, which is made by director Gauri Shinde, who is a Marathi, stars Sridevi, a superstar, one of the first superstars actresses, comes from the south. The actor Adil Hussain is from Assam, right? Sridevi's other lead, he's a guy, he's a French guy. It's a movie. It's a Hindi movie set in New York, and the most popular song that came is a Marathi folk song called Davrahi Machi song, right? Now, what explains the stunning syncretic, cross-cultural thing of Indian cinema? And और ये तो एक example मैंने दिया है, ऐसे 15 और है. So I'm saying the Hindi film industry needs to be reformed, has a lot of questions, but it has done a lot of good also. And before you come in, Pramod, right? That like
I'll tell
one
you
of the
another
Gujarat.
movie like
Huh,
that.
sorry.
Another movie like that that came in OTT. I don't know if it released in theaters. Meenakshi Sundaresan. Have you seen that movie last
Hmm.
year?
Yeah,
Uh,
Netflix में. Yeah.
That is also a very good movie of this South Indian couple enacted by this Punjabi girl. What was that Dangal girl? Forget her name. Malhotra.
Hmm.
Very sweet movie. Aadit. देखो ऐसे ऐसे ही rom com चाहिए हमको. That is the one that makes that culture itself attractive, like the Hallyu culture that got inserted into South Korean cinema. है ना? That is the elements which people really look forward to, like Mississippi Mira Nair's Mississippi Masala. Do you remember that one? As a both sort of eclectic mix of comedy, entertainment, some sensuality. This is what Indian cinema should be about. But I'm very excited. A lot of good films are going to come up.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I mean, it'll be amazing. But let's just stop, guys. Watch cinema, support cinema, have a spirited debate, but don't take all this too hard. Having said that, Pramod, I think it's best to move into our recommendations and wrap up, because I mean, what better pivot we have for our recommendations. So, Pramod, what are your recommendations for this week?
I would recommend people to uh, watch film with a pinch of salt, because it's entertainment. If you have the money to pay for that time to get entertained, just do so and just forget about it. It's not going to lead into anything serious. But from book standpoint, I hate to kind of talk about Mind Book here, but just check out Mind Book. This is an effort that we have been making for the
So,
past few years.
क्यों मेरा recommendation छीन लिया आपने? Go for it. No, no.
क्योंकि I wanted sort of a general discussion by people who are reviewing these books to see if we have made a quite decent effort in putting together these facts and statistics and numbers in order to help especially kids go preparing for competitive exams acquire general knowledge. So kindly do look at Mind Book. It's there for you to purchase on mind.net. But more importantly, I would say that continue to bless us and support us. We've just crossed 7.5 years untiringly. Adit has probably done 7 years of non-stop podcast. I don't know if anybody else other than even Joe Rogan began very recently, right? I don't think it
नहीं
began.
नहीं उसने किया है पहले से. But that's the thing ना. It's the
Yeah.
love, the support, everything we get from our folks that keeps us going. करते रहेंगे, book पढ़ते रहिए, read the Mind Book, let us know what you think. With your feedback, we'll do another discussion with everything you tell us on Mind Book. And that's my recommendation. One of the second recommendation, Netflix, Amazon पे जाइए, कोई भी मूवी देखिए. I'll give you I love, there is a Gujarati movie called Helaro which won the national award. मैंने पहले दी थी recommendation, but since we are talking about original cinema, I'll give you a recommendation of a Gujarati film. And there is another one called Chal Jeevi Laiye that released about 2 years ago. Another phenomenal Gujarati movie about how to celebrate life. Watch it. Let us know what your regional cinema recommendations are, and we'll be back. Till then, it's goodbye from Pramod and I. Thank you so much for listening, watching. We'll be back next week. Thank you, Pramod.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.